Before we dig in, Ethan said, tapping his fork against his mother's wine glass, I've got news. Big news. His family looked up like a chorus waiting for their cue. Sunday roasts at the Calder house always felt like a stage play, his mother directing, his father nodding like an approving investor, his sister cracking jokes to fill whatever silence remained. I sat between a salad I didn't choose and a chair I never claimed, trying to anticipate the version of me I'd need to be tonight, polite, invisible, flexible. You remember Lila's little studio? Ethan continued, smiling down the table, the one by the river with the peeling brick, her creative refuge? He even did the air quotes. A few chuckles flicked around the table. I knew the cadence of his voice well enough to feel the cold skim my spine. I tightened my fingers around the stem of my water glass. I sold it, he said. 85,000. Cash buyer. Closed last month. His mother clapped. His father's eyebrows climbed with approval. Smart move, son, Mr. Calder said, lifting his Cabernet. Assets should work, not sit. The bread pudding? The steaks? The wine? Ethan gestured elegantly at the table like a magician revealing a rabbit. Consider it a toast to making better choices. One less drain on the family. My first thought wasn't language. It was air. Like the room had swapped oxygen for steam. I stared at Ethan and tried to remember the last time he'd asked me a real question. Not whether I could swing by the dry cleaner or reorder his supplements. Something that required listening. The studio wasn't little. It was 480 square feet of honest space, sunlight and paint-stained floorboards. I bought it 2 years ago with money I earned consulting nights and weekends while Ethan worked at Redwood Bank and told everyone we were tight, but fine. I never hid the place. I also never invited his family there. They treated anything I loved like an expense report to critique. My phone buzzed in my pocket, unknown number. I let it go. It buzzed again, then again. 3 in a row. Ethan leaned close, breath warm with wine. Babe, it's done. You should be relieved. He kissed the air near my cheek the way you brush off a crumb. You're always talking about reducing stress. I excused myself with a smile that tasted like tin and stepped into the Calder's hallway. Their framed photos ran the length of the wall, Ethan in Little League, Ethan at graduation, Ethan at Redwood's winter gala. In every picture he stood dead center. I pressed my back to the wallpaper and answered the call. Hello, Ms. Hale? The voice on the other end was high and tight, like it had been climbing stairs. This is Marjorie with Riverside Title. We handled your unit on Mill Street? We need to confirm. Why are 2 bank investigators and a state compliance officer in our lobby asking for your statement? I swallowed. My statement? They're saying your sale violated a deed restriction and your signature may be. She stopped herself, lowered her voice. Can you come down here? Now? They keep asking me where you were during the notarization. I watched my breath fog the hall mirror. I wasn't anywhere. I never sold my studio. Silence. Then a shaky exhale. Okay, she said, voice trembling. Okay, that's what I thought. When I slid my phone back into my pocket, I caught my reflection, lipstick neat, hair behaving for once, the picture of a woman who knew her place. Except I didn't. Not anymore. I wedged myself back into the dining room. In the 2 minutes I'd been gone, the Calders had recalibrated to celebration mode. Ethan had spread papers beside the gravy boat like place cards, printouts, correspondence, a crisp copy of the deed with my name in my handwriting that wasn't my handwriting. He was mid-story, found comps across the river, leveraged the inspection to shave off $6,000. No realtor fees. If you know how to run a deal, you don't need middlemen. How'd you swing her signature? His sister, Paige, asked, genuinely impressed. Lila's careful. Ethan grinned, fox sly. Practice. And we did a remote notarization. Video call, no fuss. Remote online notarization. Ethan had said the phrase once while scrolling headlines in bed, tossing out trivia like confetti. He worked in risk at Redwood. I used to tease that he loved rules for the way they made him feel in charge. Lila, Mrs. Calder said sweetly, sliding the bread basket toward me. Such a weight off, isn't it? You'll thank him later. Ethan poured himself more red, relaxed now that the applause had landed. Wasn't about money, he said. It was about simplifying our life. You're overextended. I pictured the studio's west window, the one that turned late afternoons into honey. I pictured the crooked shelf I hung myself, the enamel mug I never washed because coffee tasted like continuity from it. My phone buzzed again. A text this time, no contact. This is Olivia Park, Compliance, Redwood Bank. Please do not confront. Keep your routine. We're en route to the title office and may need you present. I breathed in, out. Set my napkin on my lap like a person who eats dinner and not like a person who just felt the floor tilt. How long have you known? I asked Ethan. My voice surprised me, level, cool. He liked me hot and reactive. It made his calm look like leadership. A month, he said easily. Couldn't tell you while you were traveling. You get anxious about surprises. I get anxious when I'm erased, I said, almost conversational, because what else do you do while someone saws through your life with a smile? His father cleared his throat. Let's not make a scene. I looked at him. At all of them. How smooth their faces were when they decided someone else's boundaries were drama. The first time I saw the studio, the realtor apologized for the noise, the trains along the river, the bar across the street. I said, leave it, because the world sounding alive is the only thing that ever settled me. My mother used to say the same thing about me, leave her, she settles herself. Ethan had always taken that as an invitation to arrange me anyway. He topped off my water like he was being kind. You'll thank me when we can finally breathe, he said, palms open, magnanimous. I moved the funds to our joint. Used a bit to pay down debt. Took care of tonight. He raised his glass to the room. To smart decisions. Glasses lifted. The word smart rippled around the table like a currency they believed was theirs by birthright. I didn't touch mine. Ethan leaned back, satisfied. See? No fights. We're good. Across the table, Paige snapped a photo, the perfect Calder tableau, roast sliced, wine gleaming, sun triumphant, wife silent. She angled it toward me. It's cute, she said, how you're finally letting him lead. My phone buzzed once more. Ms. Hale, Olivia again. Do not sign anything. If you have the bandwidth, please come to Riverside Title now. We can protect you better if you're on record. I folded my napkin, set it by my plate, and stood. I'm stepping out, I said. Work. Ethan laughed, not unkindly. Always working. See? Selling it was the right call. I looked down at the papers he'd laid out, the neat stack of small betrayals masquerading as order. My name curved across the deed in ink that tried to be me and failed. Maybe, I said, giving him the smile he recognized from 100 parties, the one that didn't mean what he thought. We'll see. I took my coat from the hallway hook and walked toward the door. Behind me, cutlery chimed and a joke landed. Ahead of me, my phone vibrated again, one more message, one more thin line between a life I built and the one they'd tried to replace it with. When the cold hit my face, it brought the air back. The lobby of Riverside Title smelled like toner and raincoats. A printer kept coughing somewhere behind the frosted glass, and someone's forgotten scarf dripped onto the carpet in a slow, apologetic puddle. The receptionist clocked me, then glanced toward a conference room where 3 people waited like they'd been holding their breath. Ms. Hale? A woman in a navy blazer stood first. Olivia Park, compliance at Redwood. She had a pen tucked behind one ear and the kind of calm you only learn in rooms where people lie politely. Beside her, a square-shouldered man with a visitor badge that read Financial Crimes, K. Martin, and a woman with a state seal on her lanyard. Hannah Dorsey, the woman said quietly. Notary and licensing. We're not here to alarm you. Marjorie from the phone appeared next, twisting a tissue. I'm so sorry, she whispered. This isn't how things usually go. We sat around a too-shiny table. Someone had poured water into thick glasses. No one touched it. Olivia slid a manila folder toward me. Careful, like it might bite. We're going to move slowly and document as we go. First, this is the deed transfer recorded last month. The signature purports to be yours. I looked down. My name curled across the page, familiar at first glance and then wrong in all the places only I notice. The L leaned too far, the E hesitated before the tail. Second, Olivia said, the sale used remote online notarization. We requested the recording from the vendor. She clicked a laptop, turning it so I could see. A paused frame filled the screen, hands on a desk, a driver's license held up like a tarot card. The camera caught everything and somehow nothing, a hoodie sleeve, a shadowed jawline, a wrist with a tiny crescent scar I didn't have. We can play it, Olivia said. Don't, I said, before I knew I was going to. Just, don't yet. Hannah, the state investigator, folded her hands. Ron requires knowledge-based authentication, answering questions only the true signer should know, and credential analysis of the ID. Whoever did this passed both, which suggests someone had deep access to your data. Ethan works risk at the bank. The thought landed like a stone dropped into a well, sound swallowed long before it hit anything. He'd once joked he could ace any KBA test on us because he keeps everything. It's not about love, he'd told me early in our marriage when he asked for passwords. It's about preparedness. Ken Martin cleared his throat. 2 flags hit our queue. 1, the wire from the title escrow to your joint account triggered a behavior alert, rare amount, new beneficiary patterns. 2-inch, he glanced at Olivia. Internal logs show an employee accessed our notary vendor portal from a personal device outside allowable use. Olivia didn't look at me unkindly when she said it. That employee was your husband. A fluorescent light hummed overhead. Somewhere in the wall, a vent clicked open like a soft knuckle crack. Marjorie pushed a fresh tissue toward me and then, realizing how it read, slid it back, embarrassed. We didn't see it, she said. We should have. But the notary was credentialed. The packet looked complete. We trusted the system. Hannah tapped her legal pad. There's one more layer. Your unit's in the Mill Street Arts Corridor. The city granted a tax abatement on these properties with a covenant. The seller must sign a live-work affidavit in person. No remote notarization permitted. It protects against flipping and fraud. She met my eyes. That's why I'm here. I breathed out, slow. So the sale isn't a sale. It's contestable, Olivia said. We're not promising outcomes tonight. But we can cloud title, freeze remaining funds, and file an affidavit of identity theft. That keeps anyone from moving fast while we move correctly. The door opened, the receptionist appeared with an apologetic tilt to her head. He says he's her spouse, she whispered. Says this concerns him. Ethan walked in like it was his meeting. Same coat from dinner, collar up against weather he'd ignored his whole life because he'd never had to feel it. He flicked a look over the room and chose a smile designed to disarm. It used to work better. Lila, he said, pleasantly. You didn't need to run off. We could have talked. Olivia stood. Mr. Calder, Olivia Park, Redwood Compliance. Please have a seat. He did not look at her. We've already resolved it privately, he said to the heir. It's marital property. That's not what we're talking about, Hannah said evenly. We're talking about identity verification and statutory requirements. Ethan finally acknowledged Olivia when she slid a piece of paper toward him. Notice of administrative leave, she said. Effective immediately. Your system access is disabled. HR will contact you with next steps. His laugh had sharp edges. Because I sold our condo? Because my wife doesn't use her art cave? Because you used a vendor under our contract for a personal transaction and may have impersonated a borrower. Ken's voice stayed flat. The way you talk when yelling would only waste oxygen. Because our logs show your credentials initiating a session from your home IP at 9:17 p.m. Because the Ron video captures a second voice coaching off camera. Because you knew or should have known Mill Street properties require in-person signatures. Ethan's jaw tightened. He shoved a palm down his tie like it misbehaved. We share everything, he said, turning to me, reaching for the one argument he believed would outvote all others. You said vows. I didn't vow to let you use my name like a tool, I said. Quiet. The quiet I'd taught myself on long nights, when speaking only got me labeled dramatic. He dropped his tone a notch, trying soft power. Lila, it's us. I was solving the drag on our finances. You're always tired. You never even go there anymore. I pictured the west window, the light hitting the dust like a snowfall you could keep. I go there, I said. I just stopped telling you. Silence moved through the room like weather. Olivia broke it. Ms. Hale, if you're willing, we'll fill out the affidavit now. We'll have our counsel file an emergency lease pendants to cloud the title and a petition to void the transfer. You'll also want to change your passwords, freeze credit, and secure personal documents. She glanced at Ethan. Redwood will conduct its own investigation with outside counsel. Ethan tilted his head, a motion I recognized, calculating. He took a half step toward me, then caught Ken's eyes and thought better of it. This is a misunderstanding, he said to the room. She would have agreed if I'd explained it correctly. You forged my name, I said. You used a camera to pretend I was there. You pulled answers to who was my third-grade teacher and which street did my mother live on in 1997 out of whatever file cabinet you keep my life in. Explain what correctly would have sounded like. He looked, for a second, like the boy in his graduation photo, standing center frame, waiting for applause to tell him who he was. Then he straightened. Our marriage is a partnership, he said, wrote, like a line learned for a play. Hannah's phone vibrated on the table. She glanced, then stood. I need to step out, she said, to no one in particular. The notary's on the line. We all watched her leave. The room listened to its own hum. Olivia slid a clipboard toward me and a pen that wrote perfectly on the first try. Full legal name here, she said softly. Your signature there. I signed Lila Eleanor Hale and felt my hand shake for only the second letter. Ethan took a breath like he might apologize. He exhaled something else. You're going to ruin me, he said, keeping his voice low. You know that, right? You could just let the sale stand and we'd be fine. We? I said, tasting the plural the way I'd tasted tin at dinner. Hannah came back with a file pressed to her chest. The notary admits he didn't capture a full face shot, she said. Says the system lagged and he used his judgment. His judgment is why I have a badge. Olivia nodded. Then we move. She looked at me, not over me, not through me. Ready? I wasn't. It didn't matter. I put the pen down like planting something that would take a season to grow. Ready, I said. Ethan stared at the signature that wasn't his to make. For once, he didn't have a line. By the time I stepped out of Riverside Title, the rain had switched from drizzle to conviction. Olivia walked me to the curb like I might float away. We filed the lease pendants, she said, tucking her hair behind one ear. County accepted the e-recording. Title is clouded. If anyone tries to touch that deed, alarms ring. My phone pinged with an email. County register. Document recorded. The subject line was clinical. The relief was not. And the money? I asked. Remaining escrow has a hold, she said. Anything already spent becomes part of recovery. It's a process. She softened her voice. Tonight, just lock down your world. We'll push tomorrow. I nodded, thanked her, and slid into my car. The dashboard light threw a soft pool across my hands. They still shook on the first letter of my name. The calls began at the first red light. Margot Calder, in-law voicemail, singing concern. Sweetheart, I wish you'd told us you were this stressed. Ethan was just helping. Family first. Then a text from an unknown number that announced itself in the first line. This is Richard Calder. Call me. You do not want to escalate this. We can handle internally. Paige chimed in with a DM, as if we were friends. Girl, you're blowing this up online? Take the win and move on. I hadn't posted anything. When I pulled into my building's lot, a black sedan idled near the entrance. For a second I thought Redwood had sent security, but the man in the driver's seat didn't look like a guard, he looked like a man driving someone else's car. My phone rang again. New number. Ms. Hale? Daniel Knox, counsel for the buyers of Unit 3C. We just received notice of a cloud on title and an identity theft affidavit. My clients are surprised. I'm surprised every 5 minutes, I said. I didn't sell a beat. Then, carefully, understood. For now we'll suspend renovations. We'll also be seeking remedies against the parties who presented your signature. Good, I said, and meant it with a steadiness that surprised me. In my apartment, I set the chain and deadbolt, then did the thing Olivia told me to do. Freeze credit, change passwords, lock down email. I opened the drawer where we kept passports and birth certificates, counted, breathed, counted again. My laptop hummed awake, waiting. In the corner of my screen, an old photo of the studio's west window glowed like a promise that had not yet been revoked. Ethan texted, finally. Not an apology. A directive. We need to present a united front. Come home. Don't talk to anyone without me. I typed and deleted 4 truths. I settled on one. I'll come by to pick up my mail. Alone. He replied instantly. Don't be dramatic. I put on a sweater and waterproof boots. The rain had found its rhythm, tapping out a message on the world. On the drive to the house, Redwood's number flashed on my screen. I answered on speaker. Ms. Hale? It's Olivia again. Quick update. Papers rustled on her end. We've initiated a forensic review. We also secured a litigation hold across all relevant email and chat for Mr. Calder. If he reaches out through work accounts, it'll be captured. What happens to him? I asked, hating the way my stomach folded around the question. Tonight, nothing criminal, she said. But his access is gone, and IT will collect devices. If evidence supports it, law enforcement may engage. I'm sorry it's like this. Like what? I asked. Messy before it's fair, she said, and I believed she'd said it to other people on other rainy nights. The house looked different in the rain, less magazine spread, more set after the cameras leave. Ethan's car was in the drive. So was his parents' Lexus. Of course. I parked at the curb and left my umbrella intentionally in the car. Let them see me wet. The front door opened before I knocked. Ethan stood there with that practiced calm, Margot hovering behind him in pearls that caught the foyer light, Richard a step beyond, arms crossed like an audit. Finally, Margot said, relief folding into reproach. Let's get out of this storm. I stayed on the porch. I'm just here for my mail. Ethan reached for my arm. I stepped back. His hand stalled midair, then fell. He tried again with words. We should be strategizing together. This legal stunt makes us look fractured. It shows what's true, I said. We are. Richard's voice came from somewhere he imagined was the moral high ground. You don't want this to go public, Lila. It will be unflattering. Public is where it already is, I said. You hosted a victory dinner. Margot blinked, hurt gathering like rain under her eyes. We didn't know you'd take it this way. I think you did, I said quietly. Ethan forced a smile for the room, as if a camera might reward him. We can fix the optics. I'll call a friend at the paper. No, I said. No more spin. I looked past him to the hallway. The coat rack still held my rain jacket, the good one, a bright, stubborn yellow. My mail, I repeated. He stepped aside with a sigh that meant, you're difficult when you won't be managed. In the kitchen, a bank box sat on the island like a prop. He gestured. Everything of yours. We were organizing anyway. Inside, my tax returns, a worn envelope with sketches, a stack of letters from my mother, her handwriting looping across flour-dusted stationery. He touched everything and arranged it to suggest generosity. I lifted the letters gently and set them in my tote. You went through my desk, I said, not a question. Consolidation, he said. For our future. There's no future that requires my third-grade report card, I said. He looked at the ceiling like any god up there might grant him patience. You're emotional. You'll see this differently tomorrow. Richard's phone buzzed. He stepped onto the patio to take it, his low voice sliding into that register menus when they believe deals bend to tone. Margot began a sentence with "in this family," and I held up a hand. In this family, I said, you mistake control for care. The doorbell cut the silence. Ethan frowned. Who? When he opened it, two people in raincoats stood there, water ticking off their sleeves. Redwood ID badges hung over zippered fleeces. The shorter one, IT, by the laptop bag, offered a polite smile that didn't reach his eyes. Mr. Calder? Device collection. Margot bristled. You can't just. It's standard, Ethan said quickly, already pivoting. It's fine. For a second he looked small, a man shrinking to fit a world that would no longer rearrange itself on command. He handed over his work laptop, then his phone after a hesitation that lasted a fraction too long. The IT tech slid each into a padded sleeve, sealed, labeled. Thank you, he said matter-of-factly. HR will follow up. When the door closed, the kitchen felt tilted, like a boat that had lost ballast. Ethan leaned against the counter and pinched the bridge of his nose. Okay, he said. Here's what we do. We tell your bank you authorized the sale verbally. We don't do anything, I said. I've hired counsel. His eyebrows jumped. Already? By the time I reached my car, I said. You taught me to be prepared. He laughed once, without humor. You're going to ruin me. You're ruining yourself, I said, and the steadiness in my voice surprised us both. Margot took a step closer, voice dropping to coaxing. Lila, you know Ethan. He overcorrects. He meant well. We can reimburse you for the studio from family funds and end this. And what? I asked. The part where you celebrate theft or the part where you call it kindness? Richard came back in, phone still in his hand, his face tight. Press has it, he said, not looking at me. Someone leaked the suspension. Ethan's phone, his personal one, lit with notifications he couldn't answer anymore. For a beat, none of us moved. The rain shouldered the windows harder, impatient. I slid the bank box lid closed. I'm going, I said. If you need to speak to me, go through my attorney. Ethan followed me to the door anyway, lowering his voice as if whispering made it intimate. Don't do this, Lila. Don't make enemies. I paused with my hand on the knob. You already did, I said. When you practiced my name until it looked like yours. On the porch, the night smelled like wet leaves and road. My yellow jacket had funneled the sound of the rain straight into my ears. I took the stairs without touching the rail. In the car, a final message from Olivia waited. FYI, state licensing is interviewing the notary tomorrow at 10. Buyer's counsel wants a joint call at 2. We'll handle. Sleep if you can. I stared through the windshield at the Calder house, its warm windows bright against the dark, like a staged set left burning when the audience had gone home. A shadow moved across the dining room, the exact place I'd sat for years, holding my breath to fit. My phone rang again. Unknown number. I let it assume I was asleep. Then I put the car in gear. By morning the rain had thinned to a mist that made the city look like it was holding its breath. My phone was a hive, unknown numbers, 3 voicemails from Margot, 1 text from Paige that said simply, call mom, like we were 13 and grounded. An email from Olivia sat at the top, title cloud recorded. Escrow hold active. We'll file the void petition at 2 p.m. Keep any contact/document from the Calders. I made coffee that tasted like resolve and stood barefoot at the window until the door buzzer broke the quiet. Lila? It's Margot. Her voice rose from the intercom like a soprano praying. We brought breakfast. I kept the chain on. When I opened the door, Margot and Paige stood there with a pastry box sweating in the damp and a vinyl portfolio tucked under Margot's arm like a weapon disguised as stationery. We're worried, Margot said, eyes shining the way pearls shine. The internet is cruel. Let's take control of the narrative before. Paige lifted the pastry box half an inch. Almond croissants? I'm not hungry, I said. Margot angled the portfolio open, just enough for me to see legal letterhead and a signature line waiting like a trap. Our attorney drafted a small statement and a ratification. Simple housekeeping. You acknowledge that, yes, Ethan acted on shared intentions, and the remote notarization had a minor glitch. She smiled as if the word minor could make anything smaller. We'll reimburse you from the family fund today. The document title sat bold at the top, Affidavit of Spousal Consent and Ratification. A second behind it, NDA and Mutual Non-Disparagement. At the back, a cashier's check stapled to a cover page, $25,000, consideration. I let the door swing enough to show the chain. You're buying my silence about a sale that never legally happened. We are trying to protect you, Margot said, the wee heavy with a history where I was included only when it made them look generous. Let's spare you the spectacle. My phone vibrated on the console. I picked up and hit speaker. Rena, I said, you're on with me, Margot, and Paige. My attorney's voice arrived crisp, all edges, and light. Hi, Mrs. Calder. This is a formal request. Please stop contacting my client directly. Any attempt to procure a ratification or NDA while investigations are pending could be construed as witness tampering. Goodness, Margot said, offended by the syllables. We're family. Family won't be a defense, Rena replied. Please deliver any documents to my office. Paige rolled her eyes. Lawyers ruin everything, she stage whispered. Ethan ruined everything, slipped out of me before I could tuck it back. Margot's mouth tightened. He solved a problem you were too emotional to address. Goodbye, I said, and closed the door on almond and paper and perfume. The phone rang before the lock set. Ethan. I let it ring twice before swiping. Don't come here, I said. I'm not, he said, too quickly. The apartment around him sounded echoey, like a man in a house he'd made into a museum. We need to present a united front. The bank wants a statement by noon that this was domestic, not criminal. HR says it'll help. They put you on leave, I said. They're not letting your statement fix anything. His voice skated between coaxing and command. Lila, be practical. If you admit you consented verbally, we neutralize the story. The paper's already calling Mom. In what world does I whispered yes override a deed and a covenant? I asked. In the real world, he said, and I could hear Richard in that answer, men who'd always been able to talk paper into meaning what they needed. A chime undercut him, text stacking. He sighed. I'm getting hammered. Help me, please. Help looks like telling the truth, I said, and hung up before he could shape it into a performance I'd seen too many times. The next hour was a compression chamber. My building's group chat pinged about a news van outside the Calder's place. Buyer's counsel, Knox, emailed to confirm they'd stopped demo at the studio and would return the keys to Riverside Title pending the court's order. Olivia forwarded a calendar invite, state licensing, notary interview, 10 a.m. My name sat in the CC line like a witness tag. At 11:06 a.m., the Calders put out a statement on Margot's Facebook, a glossy paragraph about an administrative misunderstanding with a remote notarization service and our son's admirable efforts to streamline family assets. Comments bloomed beneath it, some sycophants, mostly sharks. Within minutes Redwood posted 3 sentences that said nothing and everything. We are aware of allegations involving a Redwood employee. The employee is on leave pending investigation. Redwood takes identity verification seriously. Ethan texted me a screenshot with, "Are you happy?" I didn't answer. At 1:14 p.m., the buzzer screamed again. It didn't stop. Whoever was down there leaned on it like an alarm. I went to the window just as Ethan slipped into the lobby. Someone had let him piggyback through the security door. 3 flights up, I heard his shoes on the stairs. Don't open, Rena said in my ear when I called. If he won't leave, I'm dialing a patrol car. He knocked. Lila? Softer, then harder. Let me in. Redwood told you not to contact me, I said through the door. Document collection, litigation hold, you're compounding. Compounding what? He laughed, then didn't. You know what they'll do to me. I lose the job, we lose the house. I already lost a home, I said. He lowered his voice, the secret register that used to feel intimate. Okay, cards on the table. I practiced your signature off your mom's letters because it felt safest. I know your loops better than anyone. It was me trying to keep us from drowning. My phone was already recording in my pocket. You just confessed, I said. I confessed to caring about us, he snapped. Then, catching himself, look, sign the ratification and this stops. No cops. No headlines. We say we used the vendor wrong. We protect your little artist brand, he added, a barb rolling off an old shelf. I won't sign, I said. The silence on the other side of the door was long enough to make me feel the distance of an inch of wood. When he spoke again, the effect fell off. "Then I'll do what I have to," he said. "Mom's friend is drafting a statement about your anxiety. You weren't well. It'll explain a lot." A vein in my temple ticked. "If you publish anything about my health, I'll add defamation to the stack." He swore under his breath, the kind of word he always pretended not to know around his parents, and his footsteps retreated down the stairs. A minute later, an envelope slid under the door. I waited. When the hallway quieted, I towed it closer. Monroe and Fields, LLP across the top, ratification and NDA inside, the cashier's check paper clipped with consideration, acceptance voids future claims. I photographed everything, time-stamped, then sealed the packet in a Ziploc and set it beside my kettle like a museum specimen. Olivia texted back instantly when I sent the photos, "Do not cache. Thank you for preserving chain of custody." At 4:03 p.m. Local news ran a lower third, bank employee suspended after spouse disputes property sale. The clip used a photo of me at a charity 5K, sweaty, smiling, unaware that someday I would share screen time with a word like disputes. That night, the Calder's living room appeared on every screen I owned. Ethan sat between his parents on a pale sofa that had never seen a coffee ring. He read a statement off a trembling sheet. "This was a misunderstanding in our marriage. We ask for privacy." He didn't look like a fox. He looked like a man whose costume didn't fit. My phone buzzed once more. "Hannah, the state investigator. By the way, notary admits cutting corners and naming Ethan as the contact. Interview tomorrow may escalate. Keep your door locked tonight." I turned off the TV and let the dark be dark. The envelope on the counter weighted, heavy, the way bad offers are. I brushed my finger over the edge and left it there, like a splinter you refuse to absorb. By 9:52 a.m. I was in a beige hallway outside Conference B, sitting in a chair that listed slightly left, listening to the building breathe. Olivia arrived with a folder and a travel mug that smelled like cinnamon, nodding once in that way that says we're not fine, but we're moving. Hannah Dorsey, state licensing, pushed the door with her shoulder, phone pinned to her ear, saying, "Yes, I understand, but judgment call isn't in the statute." At 9:58, the notary came. Mid-40s, messenger bag, rain on his collar. He looked like a man who used to believe forms would save him. "Carl Brenner," he said to the receptionist, as if saying it correctly might buy him softer questions. Inside, the room was nothing, whiteboard, cheap carpet, a humming light hopeful for replacement. Hannah clicked a recorder on. "For the record, Carl, this is a licensing interview. Lila Hale, complainant. Olivia Park from Redwood present as an observer. Please state your full name." He did. His hands wouldn't stop smoothing the edges of his paperwork. Hannah started where statutes live: credential analysis, identity proofing, knowledge-based authentication. Carl's answers pinballed between "the system lagged" and "I used my judgment." When she asked why the recording never captured a full-face shot of me, he said, "The signer preferred camera down. It happens." "It doesn't," Hannah said, not unkindly. "That's why we wrote the rule." Olivia slid a stapled set across the table. "Vendor logs show your session received help from a phone number ending in 4422. That's Mr. Calder's personal line." She laid down a second page, a vendor transcript where a typed chat lived in the margins. "Signer, hold on. Notary, I need your face in frame." Off-screen voice, "Just angle at the ID." Carl's throat worked. He said he was her spouse. He said she gets anxious about video. He said. Hannah cut in gently. "He said is how people lose licenses." When she asked me to confirm samples, I wrote my name half a dozen times on a form. The L leaned where it always leans, the E finished where it always finishes. Then I took my phone out and pressed play on the recording from my apartment door. Ethan's voice low and certain. "I practiced your signature off your mom's letters because it felt safest. I know your loops better than anyone." Hannah's eyebrow went up exactly once. She reached for the recorder. "Copying a signature for a notarization you facilitated and then failing to capture the signer's face is a textbook violation, Mr. Brenner. Expect a summary suspension while we refer this to the AG." Carl nodded too fast, a man trying to outrun his own head shake. He told me Mill Street was exempt from in-person." He swallowed. He sounded like someone who knew. Olivia slid a final sheet between us. "And for the record, Mill Street's covenant is public, highlighted, and in 14-point type." The interview ended with a thump of Hannah's stamp. When we stepped into the hallway, she softened. "We'll email you the formal notice," she told me. "The hearing at 2, be prepared. The judge may want you on the stand." Rena met me at the county courthouse with a binder and a styrofoam cup of something approximating coffee. Emergency dockets packed, she said, flipping tabs with surgeon hands. Judge Alvarez took our petition. We'll hit 3 beats: covenant violation, identity theft, irreparable harm. What about the money? I asked. Freeze and accounting, she said. We'll lock what's left and chase what's gone. The courtroom smelled like rain and old wood and people trying not to talk. Buyer's counsel, Daniel Knox, gave me a nod that read we didn't know. Riverside Title's lawyer sat 2 rows back, twisting his ring. The notary's seat was empty. Hannah told me quietly he'd joined by phone from the parking lot. Ethan entered flanked by his parents and a young attorney from Monroe and Fields with perfect hair and a folder too thin to be useful. Margot pressed a pearl-studded hand to his shoulder like a brand. Richard scanned the gallery as if influence might be hiding behind a pew. All rise, the bailiff called. Judge Alvarez took the bench. No nonsense. Eyes that miss exactly nothing. Rena stood. Your Honor, petitioner moves for a temporary restraining order, emergency injunction, and immediate clouding of title with direction to return keys to Riverside pending voiding of transfer. Monroe and Fields rose and made a domesticity speech. This is a marital misunderstanding. No urgency, no harm, we propose private resolution. Alvarez held up a hand. I read the covenant, she said. Mill Street requires in-person signatures. Remote notarization is explicitly prohibited. That alone is enough to enjoin. Rena called me. My pulse climbed a ladder while I took the stand. Name? The clerk asked. Spell it, please. I did. Rena walked me through what happened in sentences that felt like stepping stones in a river with a good current. When she asked if I sold the studio, I said, no. When she asked if that was my signature on the deed, I said, no. When she asked what Ethan said at my door, she pressed play. The courtroom heard his voice say I practiced your signature and then the line about keeping us from drowning. The sentence that once would have made me soften sounded like an anchor today. Knox added the buyer's affidavit. They'd been told everything was valid. They'd already scheduled contractors. They didn't want stolen property. Riverside's counsel stood and said words like regrettable and vendor error. Hannah's voice came through the speaker, calm as a ceiling fan. Licensing confirms violations. Summary suspension issued at 12:31 p.m. Referral to Attorney General forthcoming. Olivia wasn't a party, but Alvarez let her speak as an officer of the court. Redwood's logs show Mr. Calder accessed the notary vendor portal from a personal device post-work hours and contacted the notary during the session. We have initiated a litigation hold and turned over information to state authorities. Monroe and Fields tried a soft shoe. Your Honor, this is a private disagreement between spouses about asset management. Ms. Hale can be made whole with money. Alvarez looked over her glasses. You can't unring a deed, she said. And you can't license away an anti-fraud covenant. Also, she flicked the NDA packet Rena had filed as an exhibit, the one that had been pushed under my door. Do not hand people ratifications and NDAs while the ink is wet on an investigation. That starts to smell like intimidation. Margot flinched. Monroe's perfect hair dimmed a shade. The ruling was clean, bright, and merciless. Temporary restraining order granted. The transfer is enjoined and likely void. Title shall remain in Ms. Hale's name pending final adjudication. Keys and possession to revert to Ms. Hale today. All funds from the transaction are frozen pending accounting. Mr. Calder is enjoined from contacting Ms. Hale outside counsel. Violation will result in sanctions. The gavel wasn't dramatic. It didn't need to be. The words did the breaking. In the hallway, the air felt thinner, like something had opened. Knox shook Rena's hand. We'll pursue the seller's representatives, he said, a lawyer's promise of future storms aimed in the correct direction. Riverside's counsel tried to approach. Rena made a small nope motion with her binder, and he veered off like a man who'd just remembered another appointment. Ethan waited under the exit sign, color high, jaw set. Richard planted himself at his son's shoulder like landscape. Margot started toward me with the practiced tremble of a mother who believes sympathy is currency. The bailiff stepped between us, almost politely. Protective orders in effect, he said. Ethan looked past the badge. You didn't have to play the recording, he said, too calm. You humiliated me. You did that, I said. I brought sound. Monroe put a hand on Ethan's arm, murmuring about optics and cooling down. Behind them, Margot's whisper threaded, press will eat this, say she's unstable. Richard, call. Rena leaned in. Keep walking, she said. Let their PR eat their own tail. Olivia caught me at the elevator bank. Keys at 3, she asked. Riverside will hand them back with a security escort. 3, I said, tasting the number like a new street. Hannah texted a minute later, notary suspended. AG liaison wants a joint meeting with Redwood tomorrow. We'll coordinate. Back on the courthouse steps, the rain had slowed to a rinse. People moved like they always do, coffee cups, umbrellas, late for something normal. I stood there long enough to feel the shape of the day change. Then my phone buzzed again. Rena, one more thing. Judge flagged those NDAs as potential tampering. If the Calders push again, we file a motion for sanctions. Sleep with your phone on Do Not Disturb and your door double locked. We're winning, but mess fights back. I nodded at the sky like it had asked me a question. At 3, I'd hold the keys again. Paper had spoken. Now wood and light and dust would have their say. The keys landed in my palm with a clink that sounded like a verdict. Riverside's runner had labeled them in thick black marker, 3C, and a locksmith met us at the curb with a canvas bag and the quiet confidence of a man who makes endings stick. Olivia signed the chain of custody form on a clipboard, then stepped back while the locksmith swapped the cylinder, old brass out, new core in, 2 fresh cuts sliding into envelopes. At 3:11 p.m., the deadbolt on my studio turned for me and only me. Inside, the air held its own weather, plaster dust, river damp, the faint citrus the cleaning crew used before the sale that tried to be real. A folded drop cloth lay near the window, and a tape measure sat like an abandoned sentence on the floor. The buyers had stopped as soon as the cloud hit. It looked like a room that had inhaled and never exhaled. I walked to the west window and pushed it up. The sash stuck in the same spot it always stuck, then released with a small surrender. Late light spilled in, gold turned thin by the rain. Train wheels shuffled over the bridge like someone counting change in their pocket. I set my old enamel mug on the sill. It made a gentle, decisive sound. Do you want me to stay while you walk through? Olivia asked from the door. I'll be okay, I said. You've done enough for 10 people. She nodded, that minimal nod that meant call me if. The locksmith tested the bolt a last time, gave me 2 more keys, spares, and left. When the door clicked shut, the studio and I stood there, considering each other. I put my hand on the wall by the light switch, felt the cool underpaint I'd rolled myself, notched another silent promise into the corner of the day. The knock came soft at first, like etiquette. Then again, more certain. I checked the peephole. Pearls and a wet umbrella. I left the chain on. Margot, I said through the door. No. Lila, she said, voice pitched to neighborly concern, the umbrella dripping a little show onto my threshold. I won't step in. Just 2 minutes. Mother too, she caught herself, recalibrated, to someone I care about. I slid the chain to the last safe notch and opened 6 inches. My phone, already recording, warmed in my back pocket. 2 minutes. Hallway only. She dipped her head as if I'd performed a courtesy. Up close, she looked exactly like television, constructed to be believed. In her free hand, a manila envelope. I brought you something, she said. A letter Ethan wrote last night. He's not well. Then he should talk to his lawyer, his therapist, and HR, I said. In that order. She lifted the envelope a little higher, a benediction of cream cardstock. It's a character statement for the press. If you'd sign a line at the bottom, just acknowledging your love for each other, this would calm things. The bank would ease. People would stop speculating. Paige can't go to the grocery store without whispers. Paige can use self-checkout, I said. Margot's smile trembled into scold. This anger will eat you, she said. You've always been sensitive. You've always called boundaries sensitivity, I said, and felt the room behind me lean in. She shifted tactics like a dancer finding new music. I told Ethan to be decisive, she blurted, the sentence slipping out of a pocket she hadn't meant to show me. I said a husband sometimes has to act. He finally did. Is that a crime now? Providing for a family? It might be a crime when it includes wire fraud, I said, and the word landed between us, solid enough to stand on. Also, for the record, there's no family to provide for if the method is theft. Her chin lifted. Everyone takes shortcuts. Then everyone eventually meets a judge, I said. You were in the room. Margot's eyes flicked over my shoulder at the little room, at the scuffed baseboard, the crooked shelf, the window trying, again, to be generous. This place, she said, tone softening as if pity could be a key, isn't worth all this. Then it should be easy for you to leave it alone, I said. She took a half step forward, and the chain caught. The umbrella dripped onto my mat, each drop a tiny indecency. You win nothing by dragging this out. Sign a ratification. Take the money. We make it neat. You tried neat. You brought NDAs to my door before the hearing was scheduled, I said. The judge called it what it was. Her mouth tightened. The judge enjoys a headline. Paper doesn't enjoy anything, I said. It just says what's true. She exhaled through her nose like a horse fending off a fly. Then hear a truth from me. If you don't help us, Ethan will be charged, Redwood will cut him loose, and the story will stain you, too. Women never come out of these things looking stable. I thought of the recording in my pocket, of the way my name steadied under my hand in courtroom 4B. I thought of Olivia's email, Hannah's stamp, Rena's binder clicking open like a clean spine. I let Margot watch me choose. You have 30 seconds to step away from my door, I said, evenly. Or I call the clerk and then the non-emergency line to report attempted witness coercion. I'll send them the audio of you admitting you encouraged Ethan to be decisive, and I'll send them the packet you tried to slide under my door yesterday. Then I'll close this and go back to making tea. Her cheeks colored under foundation. You wouldn't dare. I raised my phone just enough that she recognized the red dot. I already am. For a moment we stood in the shared weather of a hallway that had carried other people's arguments before ours. She looked past me one more time. At the wall where I'd planned to hang a peg rail. At the corner where I'd put the fern. At the window that made winter survivable and summer a prayer. This is why he did it, she said softly, almost to herself. You wouldn't let go. This, I said, is why I never will. I closed the door to the chain and waited, hand on the wood, listening. A long breath. The squeak of wet rubber turning. The elevator buttons ping. The door sliding shut. I dropped the chain, turned both locks, and leaned my forehead against the door for a count of 5. Then I texted Rena the audio, forwarded Olivia the timestamps, sent Hannah a brief, Margot visited, pushed for signatures, recorded. 3 pings came back in quick succession. Thank you, good catch, noted. I boiled water on the little hot plate that had never once let me down. Steam rose, the kettle whispered and then found its voice. I sat cross-legged on the floor with the mug in my hands, and the room collected itself around me. Outside, a bar back clanged bottles into a bin. A runner thudded by, their breath steady against the river. The train crossed the bridge with the sound of many small decisions being made all at once and in the same direction. On the windowsill, dust drifted in the late light, and I realized the studio had never asked me to prove I deserved it. It had only asked me to show up. I took out my notebook, the one with water-warped corners from last December, and wrote a single line where 1,000 could go. I keep the key, and the key keeps me. Then I stood, set the mug beside the crooked shelf, and pressed my palm flat to the wall.